Putin on his knees. We'll talk about some updates from Russia and Ukraine. Today is September 16th, 2023. And on this date, we will talk about what we know about. And welcome to my channel. Hi, I'm Elena. My political channel Enough of Propaganda, helping to find facts and truth about, for example, the war in Ukraine and many other things. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about Crimea, which is Ukraine. The first nationalized properties of Ukrainian oligarchs were sold in Crimea for more than 815 million rubles. Also, about 100 of such objects will soon be put up for sale, including the apartment of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. And that's what reported the authorities of Russian-occupied Crimea. And now let's talk about the war in Ukraine and the main events of the past week. You all heard that there was a big event. Two villages, important villages, were liberated by Ukraine at Klishchiivka and Andreevka. And this was very important. There are several other channels who can explain more about this, so I won't talk about it too much. It just Ukraine managed to not only broke through Russian defense, but completely liberated two very important villages. This is near Bakhmut. I want to show you this one very interesting channel reporting from Ukraine. They're basically going day by day, and you can see about what I just talked to you on this channel. They explain it quite well. There is very interesting information. Military analyst Yan Matveyev kinda summarized the events of the past week, main events on the front in Ukraine. And you heard, I believe, about what happened in Crimea and the success of Ukraine in this area. As you know, there were strikes on the ship in Sevastopol, which is, again, I have been in the past. It's when I was in a pioneer camp in Crimea. Actually, it was near Gurzów, and the main pioneer camp in the whole USSR, and sometimes even international kids could come. But when the international children was there, they were not allowed to have trips to Sevastopol because there was Russian military base in there, and still is. And so I personally visited Sevastopol. And what happened here is there is military base and there was attack on it, on that kind of yard. Strike destroyed, basically damaged the big land carrier, troops carrier, and the submarine. So it's kind of funny in a way that the country without navy destroyed Russian submarine. Ukrainian military carried out a combined attack. The target was huge landing ship Minsk, called, and submarine Rostov-on-Don. And the ship is completely destroyed, basically, and submarine definitely requires repairs. And the most important part, that the whole dry dock is damaged. There is a good article of BBC, Ukraine's Crimea attack seen as the key to counteroffensive against Russia. And it is the key. Talking about this attack I just mentioned, and also about other things. There were several attacks around Crimea. For example, on August 23rd in Olenivka, where the S-400 system and radar station were destroyed. It was in here. And in late August, in the Black Sea, several gas platforms, former gas platforms, were destroyed. And it was so-called boycott towers. And it wasn't just gas platforms, which Russia took control in the past. And those gas platforms, Russia put some radars and stuff like that. So Ukraine carried out landing operations and returned the towers to their control. And another thing was on September 13th that Sevastopol, when ship and submarine was destroyed. In the city of Yevpatoria was destroyed as another S-400 system, which is Russia claimed indestructible and so on. None of it is true. Russia is running out of ammunition, and that's why they're begging North Korea for help. And Yevpatoria, just to me, all these words mean something. Like Yevpatoria used to be in the USSR the health place. Like it's such a beautiful weather. There are a whole bunch of sanatoriums built there where people from all over USSR were going to fix their health and spend time on the Black Sea, and usually trade unions paid for that. And now it's the city getting shot at. And Russian S-400 system has to be put in there because Putin started that aggressive war in Ukraine. And now 2 of those systems destroyed, which is good for Ukraine and bad for Russia. I mean, for Putin, not for Russia. For Russia, the soonest that war is finished and Russians go home is the best. During the entire war, Russia confirmed the losses of 12,000 units of equipment and Ukraine about 4,500. Not that all losses could be recorded, that's why they're larger than I said. But definitely not 4 times, I don't think. But nevertheless, Ukraine is doing well. Shelling of Ukrainian territory is started to be, has become slightly less frequent. But nevertheless, Russia is still trying to shell Ukraine. And last night they were shelling Kharkiv again, where my friends are. Luckily, it seemed like they're okay. And journalists from New York Times calculated that Russia began to produce more missiles than before, despite the sanctions. So they're trying to find a way to get around it. But on the bright side, that submarine which was hit in Crimea, as I told you, was responsible for some shelling of Ukrainian cities in Vinnytsia, for example. And now it damaged. And that's a good thing. In Kakhovka, 1 civilian was killed and 12 people wounded as a result of shelling. And both sides blaming each other. Russian SME reported that Russian appointed authorities, the occupants, claims that the strike was carried out by Ukrainian military. But according to Ukrainian side, a Russian army launched an adjustable aerial bomb from Su-34 aircraft, but it didn't reach the right bank and it fell on a house in Kakhovka. Knowing how much Russia lies, I tend to believe Ukraine. So Ukraine launched spectacular attacks on the Crimean Peninsula, targeting Russian warships and missiles, raising questions about their intentions regarding Crimea. Experts suggest Ukraine's strategy has 2 main goals: to establish dominance in the northwest Black Sea and weaken Russian logistical support in the south. Recent successful attacks on Russia's Black Sea fleet, submarines, and air defense systems demonstrate growing sophistication in Ukrainian operations. With the potential acquisition of advanced weapons like ATACMS missiles from the United States, Ukraine aims to challenge Russia's air defense system. However, liberating Crimea remains a complex task, and observers are cautious about jumping to conclusions. Ukrainian officials expressed determination to make Russia abandon Crimea, even if it requires force. According to Alexander Musyenko from Kyiv Center for Military and Legal Studies, who talked about that Ukrainian strategy and their main goals, Kyiv defense lines, they're supposed to move towards south, near Tokmak and Melitopol, which is on the map, would be in here. This is Melitopol, this is Tokmak. These operations are intertwined with Ukraine's counteroffensive in the south, with both initiatives supporting each other. Ukraine's special forces played a crucial role, utilizing boats and unspecified underwater delivery means to access the area and employing special technical assets for vessel identification and targeting. Ukraine also successfully destroyed 2 of Russia's modern air defense systems, the S-400s, using a combination of drones and Neptune missiles. Remarkably, Russian attempts to employ similar tactics over Kiev have generally failed due to the presence of US Patriot interceptor missiles. So basically, Ukraine sent not just real missiles, but sometimes even first they send drones to figure out where the Russian S-400s are, and then they send the real missiles, and then they say decoys. And meanwhile, when decoys get destroyed, 3 missiles landed in Crimea. And those operations have taken a toll on Russia's capabilities in Crimea, including the loss of those 2 S-400 systems, which is very important, while Ukrainian attacks on Russian radar positions and experimental maritime drone strikes further demonstrate Ukraine's growing sophistication in its military operations. While Ukraine achieving success on the front, Putin is bending his knee to China and North Korea. And this is just unbelievable. That's what Putin called that Russia, he kind of lifting up Russia or something like that, making Russia more important. And turned out to be he completely destroying Russia. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Please support Ukraine and give them whatever they need to win. Not to delay that war and drag it longer as Putin wants, because his only hope that the war will drag long enough that the Western countries and democratic countries will tired of the war and will stop helping Ukraine, which will never happen, but that's what he's hoped for. Let's make it not happen, not ever. Thank you for your attention and have a great day. See you later.